There's always so much discussion when it comes to who do we want to draft in fantasy football each year, and lots of things are taken into consideration. But do we ever really take a minute to sit down and break down every single offense? Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Today's video is going to be breaking down every single offense in the NFL. And I've got several key categories that we're going to be taking a look at to determine who has the most lethal offense in all the NFL. And hopefully this information will help us determine some names that we really need to be investing into. And one of the best parts about this video, if you're someone out there that likes to stack offenses, this is going to give you a good look at who should those stacks be. And if you love these type of deep diving videos, I'm going to encourage you to think about becoming a member of our channel here on YouTube. You're going to get some special perks that everybody that watches our videos don't get access to. By becoming a member here of the exclusive Headliner Nation, the perks that you're going to have access to could take your fantasy football game to the next level. One of which is our exclusive Discord that only our members get access to. If you're looking to bounce player ideas off of people, talk about value, trades, look for open leagues, and even have instant access to Jake and myself, becoming a member could get you all of that. Plus exclusive videos posted here on YouTube that are not available to the public. All you got to do is hit the blue join button down below, pick the tier that you would like, and if you've got any questions about how to access all of your exclusive content, let us know down in the comments. All right, I dove into 6 different categories to try and help determine who are the most explosive offenses in the NFL. And we're going to go ahead and list each of the 6 categories and where the teams ranked. Now, I'm not going to take up all of your time by going through each team individually, but we'll talk about everybody at the end of the video when we go over the overall score. Because essentially what I have done here, and if you're used to watching our videos in the past, this is probably pretty familiar. I took each of these 6 categories, averaged everything out, and at the end of the video, each team gets a score. The lower the score, the more explosive their offense. The first category we're going to take a look at is seconds per play. What offenses in the NFL are snapping the ball the quickest? Because if we're getting to the line, we're snapping the ball and we're running our plays, that is more opportunity for more plays. More plays equal more opportunities for more fantasy points. Now, if an offense isn't good and they're running the ball fast, but they're also turning it over or not completing a lot of third down conversions, we'll take a look at that in a minute. This category isn't super helpful. And when you take a look at the team at the very top, like the LA Chargers, yeah, the Chargers offense last year was super up and down. And it really doesn't matter how many plays that they were running, they were highly inefficient at times. And the same thing could be said for the Atlanta Falcons. Drake London was okay. Bijan Robinson was up and down. The quarterback position we weren't really utilizing. Kyle Pitts by the end of the season wasn't that great. So even though they were running a whole lot more plays, it wasn't necessarily equaling a lot of fantasy points for everybody involved because they weren't sustaining drives. And it is interesting to note that some of the better offenses are actually taking more times with their plays, like the San Francisco 49ers, for instance. They were dead last in this category, even though they had one of the best offenses in all of football. But they also took 0.4 more seconds per play than what the Tennessee Titans did, and Tennessee's offense wasn't good at all. So when you take a look at just seconds per play, this stat right here isn't going to give us everything we need. But when we add it in with the other stats we talk about, it helps us paint the bigger picture. All right, now we're moving on to yards per play. And when you take a look at the top of the list, it is absolutely no shock to see teams like San Francisco, Miami, Detroit, Baltimore, Green Bay, the Rams, Dallas, Buffalo. All those teams are no shock that, yeah, they're picking up a lot of yards per play. But what about the Seattle Seahawks, who came in tied for 10th with the Minnesota Vikings? Both of those teams struggled with consistency last season, especially at the quarterback position. After Kirk Cousins went down, Minnesota just didn't really have anyone that they felt like they could rely on a consistent basis. When you take a look at what Seattle did, Geno Smith just wasn't nearly as good as he was in his comeback year of 2022. too. Because of that, it felt like both of these teams may have been a little bit lower, but they were still picking up the yards. But then at the bottom of the list, you've got like the Panthers, the Patriots, both New York teams, but the Cleveland Browns being right there next to them, ranked at number 28, was also a little bit of a shock. It really leads me to believe that, number one, with Deshaun Watson, the offense just wasn't functioning all that well. And then when they started rotating between some backup quarterbacks, again, they weren't picking up a lot of big plays. But this offense was humming at the end of 2023 with Joe Flacco under center when he took over as the starter. Like at the end of the season, Amari Cooper, either you played against him and you were having nightmares for a week, or you played him and you were having sweet dreams for a week. His huge day was in large part Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco did a great job pushing the ball down the field at the end of the season. All right, now we're moving on over to points per play. So what teams were out there scoring a lot of points but maybe running less plays? What teams were running a ton of plays but didn't come up with anything to show at the end of it? While running a bunch of plays in an offense and giving us those yards could give us a pretty decent floor, it's the scoring of touchdowns that will allow us to reach the potential ceiling for a lot of these guys. And once again, not a whole lot of shock for the people at the top of the list, but there were a couple of risers and fallers that may have surprised you, namely the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles ranked 12th in yards per play, but they ranked 8th in points per play. That could definitely mean that the Eagles, were driving the field and they were bringing in yards and yards and yards, but they weren't picking up like big chunk yards. They were driving the ball consistently and finding the end zone after that. But what about a team like the Kansas City Chiefs? They went from 7th in yards per play all the way down to 16th in points per play. Now, it's no shock that even though they won a Super Bowl last season, the offense as a whole for the Kansas City Chiefs just wasn't as dominant as it had used to be in the past. And that could definitely change this year with a lot of speed added to this team. But what about teams like Arizona and Atlanta, who tied for 14th when it came to yards per play, but are all the way down to 25th and 27th when it comes to points per play? Yeah, they may have been doing pretty decent in the yards department, but they were not doing good getting the ball into the end zone. Too many of their drives were stalling out at the end. Now, a super important stat in this entire formula that we're putting here together is going to be first downs per play. And we want to look at first downs because the more first downs that you are getting, the longer you're staying on the field. And it might not necessarily be big chunk plays or checkdowns. It's just, hey, we're continuing to pick up 10 yards at a time. The more first downs you're picking up could allow for a really nice floor. You're staying on the field. You're picking up yards. You're putting together fantasy points. But again, it's not a one-all be-all with just this category. We have to add it with everything else. Because we just talked about how a team like the Kansas City Chiefs are kind of going up and down, right? They were pretty good in yards per play, they fell down in points per play, and now they're back up to 8th when it comes to first downs per play. This offense as a whole moved the ball down the field last season. When you played Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce or Rashee Rice, you were getting, or Isaiah Pacheco, how do I even forget him? You're getting a pretty decent floor. It's just the fact that they failed to put the ball in the end zone more consistently last season to help all those guys reach a much higher level of ceiling. But then what about like Houston? They ranked 10th in points per play, but fell all the way down to 17th in first downs per play. Nico Collins. Nico Collins was one of the better big play threats in all of football last season. When he was catching the football, he was going for big time yards a majority of the time. Even Tank Dell had some big plays last year. And that's the big reason why those numbers are very different. Because they were scoring and putting up points. They were on the field a little bit less because they were picking up such big yardage on those plays. Third down conversions per game. How often are you staying on the field when you get to third down? Extending drives is huge from just a pure football standpoint. Extended drive, keep the opposing defense out there, wear them down, tire them out. Fourth quarter, you can just wipe the floor with them. From a fantasy perspective, how often are our guys staying on the field to potentially pick up more fantasy points? Third down conversion rate, absolutely great, because that means we've got more opportunities for points when we get to third down. And what about a team like the Chicago Bears? When you take a look at really everywhere they finished offensively in these categories we've talked about, we really haven't talked about them an awful lot. But they finished 5th in third down conversions per game last year. The biggest reason why? It's got to be Justin Fields getting outside the pocket and able to pick up those third down conversions with his feet was a very dangerous weapon. And they're going to have that opportunity again this year with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams may not be the dynamic runner that Justin Fields is, but he's very athletic. He can get out of the pocket, he can move around. And with the offensive weapons that they have there now, they should be able to easily continue to extend drives even on third down. Miami is all the way down at 21st, and I don't love to see that. And they were a huge explosive offense. But more times than not, when their back was against the wall on third down, they were just not converting at a high enough clip. Just imagine how much more dangerous the Miami Dolphins would have been that when they got to third down, we ended up pushing that percentage up, and we were some of this higher level teams and they could extend drives. Miami would have been absolutely insane last year, and this year that is a big area that they can improve in. Turnover margin per game. What offenses are turning the ball over the most? Now, this goes from a better turnover margin to a worse turnover margin. So, like the New York Giants, their 0.7 turnover margin meant their defense was creating more turnovers than what their offense was generating. And that's actually kind of crazy with what the New York Giants had on offense last year. But remember a few minutes ago when we talked about Atlanta and Minnesota and how they were picking up yards, but they weren't really punching the ball in? Well, this makes a little bit more sense because they're all the way down at tied for 30th with a negative 0.7 turnover margin. That's the reason why they weren't scoring more points. They were sustaining drives, they were staying on the field, but when they got across the 50, they started turning the ball over way too often. And with as good as the New York Jets defense was last season, they could not overcome how bad the offense was. A negative 0.4 turnover margin. The defense literally did everything that they could, and the offense, they couldn't sustain drives, they couldn't score, and they couldn't keep the ball in their hands. All right, now it's time to discuss the final scores for every team. And so far in this video, we've listed teams going from best to worst. We're gonna flip it now because I want to talk about the worst teams first. Probably not a shock to anybody to see these 8 teams listed on the board. The New York Jets, obviously losing Aaron Rodgers, their quarterback position was an absolute disaster. They get Rodgers back this year. That number cannot be nearly as bad. When you take a look at Carolina, they've done a lot to try and improve the offense around Bryce Young. They used the first overall pick on him, and they're going to continue to ride him to make sure that they didn't waste that pick. They've tried to build a better offense around them, and hopefully this number improves. The Tennessee Titans, they're putting all their eggs in the Will Levis basket. They gave him another running back potentially. They signed Calvin Ridley. While this team could end up being explosive at times, I also believe it could end up being highly volatile as well. For the New England Patriots, it sounds like Jacoby Brissett is going to be the starter to begin the season and maybe for a significant portion of the year. Now, Jacoby Brissett is not a bad quarterback by any means, but he's not the type of quarterback that's going to bring New England out of the depths of these scores here. Drake May has a little bit more potential for that. So as long as it's Jacoby Brissett, I would expect to see that offense continue to, just put up points here and there, but not really super explosive and maybe not really giving us the big plays that we would need to reach a high ceiling with those guys. The New York Giants. They lost Saquon Barkley. Devin Singletary is the guy replacing him, who was not very efficient last season. They drafted Malik Nabers, one of the best wide receivers in this past year's class. But this offense revolves around Daniel Jones. If we see the Daniel Jones from a couple of years ago, then these numbers probably go up a little bit more and a little bit more. But if we see any other Daniel Jones that we have had throughout the course of his career, the New York Giants will be right here again at the end of next season. The Las Vegas Raiders, I think once again, we're going to see them pretty low here. The running back room with Zamir White leading it is not nearly as scary as what it once was with Josh Jacobs. A lot of people are buying into him. I'm not really doing it. You have Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew that are kind of vying for the starting spot at quarterback right now. Aiden O'Connell, he was a part of these numbers here last season. Gardner Minshew was with Indianapolis, and we'll see where Indianapolis ends on this list here pretty soon. But for right now, he's not the type of guy that's going to accelerate an offense. He might make it a little bit more consistent. He might give it a little bit more of a floor, but it's not going to be a whole lot more dynamic. Jayden Daniels at quarterback for Washington definitely leads me in the direction of saying they're one of the teams in this category right here that could take a big jump next season when we do this video again. He definitely has the legs to extend plays and get outside the pocket and find his receivers, but he's got a pretty good arm as well. Maybe not talent-wise being able to throw it as deep as we would like, but accuracy-wise, he's not all that bad. He's got really good weapons at wide receiver and really good weapons at running back to help stabilize this offense. And then the Cleveland Browns. I mean, until I see Deshaun Watson return to his Houston form, I don't find myself betting on their offense to get super explosive anytime soon. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our next 8 teams. And the first 4 of those teams all have significant changes at the quarterback position in 2024. Pittsburgh, Denver, Chicago, and Atlanta. Pittsburgh, obviously going to have Russell Wilson to start, maybe Justin Fields. Denver, probably going to be Bo Nix. Chicago, Caleb Williams. Atlanta, Kirk Cousins. All 4 of these teams could definitely see a very, very nice jump from where they're at in this year's rankings to next year's rankings. The Cincinnati Bengals, it's all about Joe Burrow. He's got to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, the Cincinnati Bengals should also be a team that takes another significant jump. Now, they don't have Tyler Boyd, and there's no telling how often T. Higgins may find himself on the sideline without a new contract. But they still have Jamar Chase, and they have some other weapons that are really underappreciated right now and could end up being fantasy contributors at some point in 2024. The LA Chargers. This is really all banked around the rest of the team staying healthy. Justin Herbert is fine right now, but they lost a lot of players last year to injuries at the wide receiver position, and it got really, really tough. I don't see this number going much higher, though. In fact, this number could end up taking a step back this year as the Chargers move to a more run-heavy offense, trying to establish themselves on the field, keep the ball in their hands, and then score when needed. They're going to rely on their defense and running the football. So explosiveness is probably not going to be the name of the game. Jacksonville is going to be about Trevor Lawrence. He's got to get way more consistent. He had way too many turnovers last season and just didn't find himself in a position to be consistent at the point of his throws. We'll see if that changes this year. They revamped the offense a little bit. Hopefully the offensive line takes a step forward, and we'll see if Doug Peterson can keep Jacksonville moving in the right direction. And for the Minnesota Vikings, yeah, they don't have Kirk Cousins anymore, so who's going to be the quarterback? Honestly, if we're going to be taking it a guy like Sam Darnold, I don't think Sam Darnold is going to be the guy to move this offense forward. I think he's going to be a guy to control the offense and keep it on the field, but I don't think he's going to give them the explosive plays and the touchdowns needed. JJ McCarthy, he's a guy that could go either way right now. Definitely could have some turnovers and play like a rookie quarterback, but he also has everything that you need to be highly successful at the quarterback position, including one of the biggest arms in this past year's draft for those big plays to Justin Jefferson. All right, let's talk about the B tier teams. And how about the Arizona Cardinals finishing in this area? When you took a look at their offense last year, they didn't have a ton of playmaker. James Conner was good, but he continuously got hurt. You had Trey McBride, and then it just felt like a hodgepodge of everybody else. But now they've got Marvin Harrison Jr. So even though they weren't all that bad last year, I could still see a pretty decent improvement for them, or at least remaining in this area. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield last year was fantastic, and he got that new contract. Hopefully that doesn't change anything. He had to battle his way back to being a starter, and last season he showed the NFL that he was capable of it and leading a team to the playoffs. Let's see if he can keep it up. It's all on Baker Mayfield, though. If he comes crashing down, so does the offense. Indianapolis has a chance to improve greatly this year as well, with Anthony Richardson being fully healthy and Jonathan Taylor being fully healthy. There's 2 teams in this group right here that I look at and I say they have the biggest shot to move up to green. It would be Indianapolis and the team that's next up, the Kansas City Chiefs, who also made improvements to their wide receivers. Now, we don't know about Rashee Rice yet, and we'll continue to keep an eye on that draft, and as of right now, it doesn't look like any type of suspension will come before the legal process plays out, which could be towards the end of the season. So keep an eye on it. But Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy are both going to help stretch the field and could make Kansas City a whole lot better than what we saw last year. The Seattle Seahawks, who's going to end up being the quarterback for the rest of the season? If Geno Smith falters, I would not be shocked if we see Sam Howell. And this offense probably has better big play potential with Sam Howell than Geno Smith. So right now, if Geno Smith continues to stay the quarterback, we're probably going to see Seattle maybe in this area or fall back a few spots if teams behind them get better. If Sam Howell's the quarterback, the turnovers could end up hurting them, but I definitely know the big playability would be there. New Orleans could end up taking a step forward. They haven't done a whole lot to improve their offense. Really, the improvement is going to have to come from Derek Carr and everybody that's already on the roster. I would bank on New Orleans basically finishing in about the same spot. And for Philadelphia, I could see Philadelphia taking a jump. Last year, towards the end of the season, they tanked, and they tanked hard. This year, I don't see that as happening as much. So let's go ahead and bet on the Philadelphia Eagles to either stay right in this area or even bump up a little bit. And right on the fringe, the LA Rams. Now, the LA Rams all revolve around health on Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. If they both stay healthy, we're fine. We're golden. This offense will be just as good as it was last season. But if those two guys start missing a whole lot of time, if Kyren Williams misses any time, then that's where this offense could end up falling. Right now, I think that's one of the most volatile offenses in all of football because their three main playmakers all have some injury concerns. They're either really good with all of them or they'll be really bad without any of them. All right, let's move on to the A tier. And Houston, for as good as they were last season, they're going to be even better this year. Houston is one of those teams that I could see challenging for the top spot in this video a year from now. The Baltimore Ravens, they were really good through the air last season. I would not be shocked if they got back to the run game a little bit more with Derrick Henry, though. Maybe that drops them a couple of notches, but not really a whole lot. The Miami Dolphins, nothing is changing here. They're going to be just as explosive as they have been in the past. They should be an A team once again. The Green Bay Packers, the team that is defined as doing more with less, because when you look at the players on their team, the names don't really draw the it factor that a lot of the teams around them do, and sometimes that doesn't matter. We'll see if Jordan Love keeps things going. If he experiences any kind of a slump this year, though, Green Bay could be in a lot of trouble. The Buffalo Bills are definitely the one team on this list that will be dropping out. The Buffalo Bills will be nowhere near the A tier, I believe, next year. I definitely think they're going to be down into the B tier, and I wouldn't be shocked if they even end up falling a little bit more. I know people still love Buffalo because of Josh Allen, but I'm not buying into it, unfortunately. San Francisco, as long as they stay healthy for a majority of the year, they're all going to be right here. And even if they have guys miss time here and there, it doesn't matter. They have so many weapons around them that they'll end up being just fine. Yo, what about the Detroit Lions finishing number 2 overall in this video? They got some love last season, and hopefully they continue to get the love this coming year. Jared Goff is the one guy that doesn't get enough love, though. Dude is so good and has been excellent in Detroit. Your big playmakers, Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 12 running back. David Montgomery is a top 24 running back. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a top 5 wide receiver. Sam Laporta is maybe the number 1 tight end in all of football right now. If you're still taking Travis Kelce, then Laporta might be number 2. And then Jameson Williams could end up breaking out. Detroit should be right in this area once again next year. What about the Dallas Cowboys? For as much hate as they get, for as much crap as we give them and their fans, for flaming out in the playoffs year after year after year, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, this team continues to be fantasy darlings. Now, are they as good next year as they were this year? I don't think so, because I think the run game is going to take a big step back. Even as bad as Tony Pollard was at times last season, I don't know how much faith I have in Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle to be high-end opportunities. So for this team, it's really about Dak, and it's really about CeeDee Lamb. Jake Ferguson I like a lot this year as well. All 3 of those guys could score more than enough fantasy points for your team, while Dallas ends up falling out of the top position still. Yo, Headliner Nation, hopefully you appreciated this video. This is the third offseason that I have done this, taking a look at the best overall offenses from last year. Let me know down in the comments below what shocked you the most though. If this video can get 750 likes, then I'm gonna pick someone in the comment section that tells me what shocked them the most about this video to win one of our draft guides for absolutely free. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe. If you're new here, turn on those bell notifications so anytime we've got new content, you're notified right away about it. But for now, Headliner Nation, I'm gonna get on out of here. YouTube's gonna recommend a video to you that you may have already missed. Make sure that you click on that right now and check it out. But peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.